Hey y'all, it's Lena to intro our podcast episode with SeaBlue Collective. Recently, I was able to sit down with one of SeaBlue Collective's founders, Clarissa, and learn more about the creation of SeaBlue, its motivations and inspirations, and the company's hopes for the future of sustainability. SeaBlue Collective is a company filled with like-minded creatives from various backgrounds, hoping to build their own companies with sustainable and ethical products with the help of Clarissa and her co-founders. We are most notably reminded by Clarissa that sustainability is not perfect, nor should one think it is. By simply being aware of the environmental impacts of plastic use and trying to incorporate small actions of sustainability in our everyday lives, anyone can pride themselves on their actions towards helping the environment. Make sure to follow SeaBlue Collective on Instagram at SeaBlue Collective and their website, www.seablue.com, to check out their awesome vendors.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, welcome.
I am super sorry.
No, oh my gosh, do not worry.
We drove across country, and we're in New York City for like a month. We actually only have like a week and a half left. We've been here since September 1, so like half of our communication was like us driving across.
Oh my gosh.
That's why I was like so stop and go and get it.
No worries. I totally get it. I've been like doing school and all that stuff too, so it's like it's totally okay. But yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in. Do you have questions for me?
I do. I have a few, and then there's some like main questions, and they kind of like branch out into more specific concepts that I'm hoping to ask you. But yeah, it'll be super chill. If you see me like looking, I just have my questions right next to me.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I have like two screens too.
Okay.
So
but yeah, we'll get into it. So first, I'd just like love to learn more about like your history and your background, and like how you met like the other women that you work with in SeaBlue. Like how long have you known each other? And then if you could just think along with like the background and like the growth until this moment, are there any examples or experiences that you've had that has like influenced the creation of SeaBlue? Like, can you think of specific things that really like pushed the inspiration or like the group work? And just start off.
So you already know, I went to undergrad at UCSB. There's actually 3 co-founders, 2 of us that are like more active than the third. But it was the third co-founder who's less active now. And we both taught ourselves how to surf at UCSB. We didn't know how to surf before then. And so that was like a really cool experience. And we've been like surf buddies ever since. And it was like 2 years, I don't know, 2017, whenever that is, after graduating, we were like, okay, this is stupid. Like every surf shop we walk into, like it's like a white girl on the wall, like holding an unwaxed board, and her bikini is like this big. And we've worn those bikinis, or we've tried to wear those bikinis surfing, and they don't stay on. Like you literally, like they're not really sporty. Like they're not. And we were just, then we'd like walk over the other side, and there's like a huge like this guy surfing like a ginormous wave in Tahiti, and it's like super cool, and all the board shorts are like functional. Things have changed since, so like it's getting better, but we were really frustrated with like surf media and like surf brands and how they just didn't represent kind of who we saw in the water. They didn't really represent us, so we started an Instagram account called The Ocean is Female, and we just wanted to start like reclaiming the space for female surfers by using their own words. So we sent out interviews to as many people as we could find, asking them to share their story, and then like send a picture. And we were like, we don't care about the picture quality, like whatever, like, you know, it's not image based. And we'd pull a quote, post a picture. Like if you go on The Ocean is Female, like we're still doing that to this day. So that was like the origin of our business idea, is like we created this community. And so for, like 4 years, we've shared over 1,000 stories. We've only repeated a couple stories, so almost everyone who we post is like someone new, from like 5 different how many countries? I don't know, a lot of different countries. We've shared them in 4 different languages, of just female surfers around the world. And that's been like super cool. We've met some amazing people. And we felt like we had kind of like changed the space because like we were an online source. Like Instagram at that time was like super brand oriented. It was like very like everyone posted pictures in bikinis. Like it's gotten a lot more like natural.
Yeah.
Like everyone uses like so like heavy filters. So like we were like the one place where it was like almost like organic, you know. Yeah. These are like real people telling real stories. And so I was like, okay, so we just like kept it going. And a lot of different organizations kind of spun off from like the Ocean is Female. So there's like a bunch that are now like focused on like Black girl surf or like brown girl surf or like the Latinx community, like get them on to surf to like quote unquote diversify the lineup. So there's been a ton of work that's been done since we launched, which we love to see, and we share their projects all the time. And when I was working in a nonprofit and I kind of felt just burnt out by the work, the nonprofit, I felt like could be doing better work, but just wasn't, because we were constantly seeking donation. And that was like our main drive, which is in theory, you're supposed to be focusing on your mission, you know, but you're like, the money is what runs you. I was like,
you don't have the money.
Yeah. So it's just like, oh, this is frustrating. And so I found my master's program online, and it was like an answer that I hadn't even known existed. And so it's building a business around social impact. So that's what I got my master's in, is a master's of science in social entrepreneurship. So it's like, how can you build a social enterprise? And a social enterprise is like, you have a triple bottom line model, which is, you know, obviously revenue, like obviously money, social impact and environmental impact. And like I brought the Ocean is Female like with me to grad school, and I was like, I have this, like what do I do with it? Like I created like a community. We have like almost 20,000 followers. I've met like some amazing people. Like, what do we do now? So I like brought it through all classes, and it was through there I met my co-founder, who's like my bread and butter, like love her. And she was like, I'll help you. Like, I surf too. Like, what you're doing seems really cool. I relate to it. Like, I want to join you. And I was like, yes. Like, I don't know what to do. I need help.
Yeah.
And so then we were like, okay, what do we do with it? And I was like, okay, so we've met like a bunch of women who have also started their own businesses, like kind of through this platform. And a lot of people are trying to create products and businesses that are ocean friendly. I was like, I don't really want to continue on like, you know, reclaiming this space for women, because I feel like a lot of nonprofits and organizations are kind of like doing that, like they've taken the work from us. And I want to give them that, like they're doing it better than we could. Like, let's just not touch it. I was like, let's focus on something else. And like, what's a major problem we face every day? And like, as surfers, every time we paddle out, there's like plastic floating in the ocean. And we're like, what can we do about that? We're like, well, beach cleanups are just like scratching the surface, because like you do beach cleanup and like it rains, there's more plastic on the beach. You're like, you didn't really solve anything. So we're like, how do we address like this pollution at its source? Like, how do we make it less about the consumer's choices and more about the business's responsibility to like not use, you know, plastic or like ocean contaminants, like that sort of thing. And we're like, okay, like let's start a marketplace. Let's bring on some of these people, these entrepreneurs that we've met, and like let's start promoting their products as like people who are doing the work. Like, these people are trying to use less plastic, like let's push them forward. And since we already have a following, like that makes it easy. These are our first customers. And so that's what we did. So that's like the origin story of SeaBlue.
I love that.
In a nutshell. Yeah. So my founder, I met her through the graduate program, my co-founder. And then the third co-founder is like the girl that I learned to surf with.
Yes. But so my next question, because I was looking at your website a bit, and something that really stood out to me that you guys were talking about, is that you say that community is your lifeblood. And then I was wondering if like you could go a bit more deeper into that and what that means to you and to SeaBlue. So, and then this is kind of just an after note I wrote after the question that if you want to think about it, but like, what does community mean to you and how would you define it? And in turn, how is that represented in SeaBlue today?
So community is like huge for me personally. Sociology background. I'm like, I love creating like groups of people that work together to solve a problem, essentially. Like I love that. My co-founder is way more like science and database, which is perfect. Like we need both sides.
That balance.
Yeah. So when we were kind of like figuring out like, okay, marketplace models, like Amazon, like it's a major one. Like how can we make ours different and more innovative and more supportive? So all of our vendors are like essentially part of our marketplace, like as their whole selves, if that makes any sense. So like we continued like the storytelling aspect that we had on the Ocean is Female into our marketplace. I don't know if you saw, we have like a vendors drop down where it's like you can read about every single vendor and like their story. And I do a lot of the marketing behind our brand. That it's my belief that consumers, if you feel connected to a product based on like the founder's motives, then there's more to it. You're like, oh wow, this founder like has tried so hard to like only use dead stock fabric or whatever, which is like upcycled fabric or whatever. Or like this founder has like overcome these things to like create this, and you're like, that's so cool, I want to support them. Like like in your brain, you're not just buying a product, but you're like supporting a business, which is a really cool switch to make. So that is like one aspect, is like the storytelling part. And then the other aspect is like, how can we make this community of vendors supportive of one another, like to bring them all together. And all of our vendors create different products. Like some of them is like swimwear, like others produce like bamboo utensil things. Like they're really random. But they all have the same issues because a lot of them are small businesses. So they're like, how do I market? Like, how are you like retaining customers? Like what are some ways that you're doing sales? And then, so we bring them together in spaces. We have like vendor meet and greets, and like allow them to like speak with each other and like come up with ideas. And then they do like giveaways among themselves. And then the other thing that we do is like bringing them together so they can work together to share concepts. So the whole space of like sustainability, it's expensive, it's confusing. If you're a small business owner, you might be like the only one running your business. You don't have hours to spend on like research. So like, how can we cut down that like effort and make it easier for them? So we provide them with discounts to sustainable packaging companies. Like we sit down with them and run them through the scorecard, and any questions they have, like we provide them with resources. And then in these spaces that we bring people together, like they give each other ideas. And the idea is that, yes, business by nature is competitive, right? But like sustainability efforts should not be. Like one should not be more sustainable than the other, and that shouldn't be a competitive thing. Like we should all be just as sustainable as one another. So that's like the concept behind the community aspect of SeaBlue.
My next question kind of goes into more of the consumer side of it and like being a mindful consumer. And I do have a couple of like added on questions after this larger one, just to like get into depth, but I'll just start with the first one. So mindful consumerism is obviously something that seems to mean a lot to SeaBlue. And so how would you define that in your own words, and how do you incorporate that, if you try to, in your everyday life?
So first and foremost, mindful consumerism is imperfect. Like it is, by the sense of affordability, access, and just like resources available, right? We acknowledge that a decent number of products on our marketplace are expensive, and they're expensive for various reasons. Like one of them being the fact that, when you produce in smaller quantities, you can't your costs are higher, as opposed to like mass producing, but then you potentially have waste, right? So a lot of our vendors like produce per order.
Yeah.
But it's expensive. It's harder. Another reason is like a lot of the materials are still new. So they're not as affordable. And the idea is like eventually we can democratize, like there needs to be like a mass transition to use a lot of these innovative sustainable materials for them to become more affordable.
Yeah.
Because then they're going to be mass produced, you know? So with that said, like it's imperfect for sure. But what we like wish is for someday there to be like a world in which we can all seek out products that match our ethos.
Yeah.
That we can also afford, because we live in like a really fast consuming society that like, you know, there's different seasons and different colors and different like styles, and things go in and out so quick that like we're really used to fast fashion.
Yeah.
And I fall victim to it. Like I shop at Lulu sometimes, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's like no one's perfect.
No.
And it's understanding that and being cognizant that no one is, but also if you have the means, like if you have the financial means to, when you can, purchase from companies that are really trying, because your purchase is essentially a vote. In like the overall system of like change, you know, and you're supporting them with your dollars, and that's important for everyone. And we like we're growing and molding and changing as a business, and we hope, like, we started with small businesses because that's like we are a small business as the scale we can kind of operate on, but we hope to work with larger companies to kind of infiltrate a bit more into like brands that people actually purchase frequently.
Yeah. So how do you offset the fact that it's like majority an online business and like the environmental impact of shipping? Because I think that's definitely something that's prevalent today. So I was just curious about, you know, are there specific things that you guys do or don't do? And yeah, how does that work for you guys?
Yeah. So it was ideal that we started during COVID because everything was online.
Yeah.
Like started 2020, like so that played a lot into kind of how we launched. The whole shipping aspect. So we're a drop ship company, and what that means is if you were going to sell sweatshirts on our site or whatever, you have a product you want to sell, and we're like, okay, cool, send us product photos, like upload essentially your product into the back end of our marketplace, like what's the price tag, what's the shipping cost, blah blah blah, and you do that, and then as soon as someone places an order through our marketplace, you get an email, and so you ship it from wherever you ship your products from. And so we did that really honestly primarily to avoid the additional like shipping routes, well, also because we didn't want like a warehouse full of stuff and to pay for a warehouse because we're a startup. But like it was, a lot of that was like, okay, like we don't want to have to like purchase inventory, because the other like option for that for marketplaces is like to purchase wholesale, which you get a cheaper rate, which would actually make us more money. You get a cheaper rate on the product, and then you like can mark up the product however much you want on your site, and then you ship it from wherever you're shipping from. But we didn't do that because we didn't want to waste product. Like we didn't want product sitting somewhere that wasn't being sold. Like we don't want to create any waste along the supply chain, and also to have that additional shipping route is like additional carbon footprint. So like to go from, you know, the manufacturer to the business to us, and then us to the consumer. That's so much.
Yeah,
it's so extra.
A lot of steps to take.
Yeah. And so in our sustainability scorecard, we have 4 major categories. One is ocean contamination, ocean contaminants. And so that's anything like most commonly known as like reef safe. But like honestly, we count it as anything that leaches. So like even things like inks. Like inks on packaging, like if that ends up in a landfill, what leaches into the ocean? So ocean contaminants, plastic, carbon footprint, and human ocean access, the carbon footprint aspect is where we work with them one-on-one to figure out where they're shipping, like what's going on within their supply chain in their shipping routes. So how much of your product are you purchasing overseas? Mm-hmm. And like how much of it are you able to like bike down the street and get, you know, like, yeah. And like, is it traveling via freight? Is it traveling via airplane? Like, and those have different carbon footprints. Mm-hmm. And then how are you shipping it to the customer?
Yeah.
And USPS is one of the cheapest, most carbon neutral shipping routes because USPS delivers every day no matter what. Mm-hmm. So if you have a package, it's not going to add carbon to the system.
Yeah.
And then another thing is like overnight, like 2-day shipping or whatever, that's usually going like via air.
Yeah.
So we discourage people from doing that. Mm-hmm. And then there are some like carbon neutral mm-hmm. companies that you can like ship through, like Sendle is one. And they're like offset by like, I think planting trees or something. I don't know. I'm kind of a little bit dubious over the offsetting stuff. Yeah. But anyway, so some of them use those those as well. So we do work with them one-on-one with carbon neutrality efforts.
Amazing. That's great. All right. So next question. So to you, what makes a good vendor? What do you look for not only environmentally, but are there things that you look for creatively as well? And then if there are any like specific examples of vendors that you want to bring up or like stories of that, but yeah, just what do you look for?
So when we first launched, because we were launching like specifically out of a female surf community, we launched with like all products that were female oriented and surf oriented, like very ocean related. But now we're trying to like kind of not move away, but like expand. So for the most part, a vendor who is working on becoming more sustainable, like they may not have the most sustainable product, but they want to make it more sustainable. Like they just want to make the effort. Like that's huge. Like as long as you want to change, then like we'll bring you on. Like it's fine if you use plastic. Like it's fine if you have plastics in your product. Like, you know, sometimes plastic's unavoidable because there isn't an alternative on the market. Mm-hmm. So like being cognizant of that. And obviously brands that are a little bit more ocean related are helpful because it kind of helps to leverage like our uniqueness as a marketplace. Because right now we're one of the only ocean friendly marketplaces out there. And so having products that are kind of related to that, it just helps with like our overall brand building.
Yeah, of course. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, only 3 more questions left. But my next question was companies. So it's kind of like an observation that leads into a question, but there are oftentimes where companies are pretty like heavily structured with a lot of rules and regulations about who they take in and what they process. So are there any areas of SeaBlue where you're allowed to be more creative and imaginative? Because I know it's still a business. But are there any areas where you like pride yourself on the creativity? I feel like maybe that could feed into the community aspect that you guys have, because I know that's pretty unique. But
yeah, I mean, I would say like the whole thing's creative in a lot of ways. I mean, we built it from nothing, and like we're not like huge rules and regulators per se, because it's more like where we're coming from is a lot more like effort based. Like you need to be making the efforts to make the changes. So it's not like, you know, you don't change, you get kicked out. Like like it's not like that, as long as people are willing to make the changes. I do really like our events. That's a place that's really great because we get to kind of talk with all of these people one-on-one. Our sustainability calls are also really wonderful because we learn a lot about like, you know, if you make a sunscreen, like where do you get your raw materials? Like the zinc, like West Africa or something. Like there, you have to, like, you don't realize how much goes into one product. Like it's wild. Like you just think of it more as like the final product and getting to the customer, and you're like, oh, like do you ship plastic free and is it carbon neutral? You're like, no, but like how did it get to you in the first place? And like the warehouse do you store it in? Like, do you have solar panels? Like, do you use wind power? Like, what are ways that you're like cutting down your plastic usage when you get all of your raw materials from your supplier? Like, do they use, plastic free shipping methods? So you're like diving deep into these supply chains has been so eye-opening and also really wonderful because we learned so much as a company, like how we could potentially expand and grow in ways in which we can help businesses in the future make this whole process easier.
Yeah. And I feel like it's even a creative process for the companies to like find whether they use solar power or they use wind power. Like that in itself, I feel like is creative because you're trying to build like a company or products that are built so differently from what's previously been created. And like, yeah, I feel like that takes a lot of brain power and creativity in and of itself. So
yeah. And I do all the marketing. And our third co-founder actually does a lot of like any like artsy stuff. She does it. So she's definitely like our little creative brain and we love her for it. And we do blog posts as well. And she writes a lot of those. So she's our little creative mind. I'm definitely more of marketing and I'm definitely more of like operations and finance.
So, last question. This is just a bit more broad advice that you'd want to give. So do you have any recommendations for young girls or women that want to start their own business? That is basically it. Because we know that you guys kind of met at the USC program. Any young businesswomen, entrepreneurs, any advice you have for them?
Yeah. So my advice to anyone who wants to start a business is seek advice. I know that sounds crazy, but we talked to so many people, like reached out to people on LinkedIn, like contacted people after, networking events. Like we've had so many calls with so many different people and they all have different insights and we take each call as their own. Like it's like isolated advice and you're like, you could take it or you leave it, because not everyone knows you and what you're building. But that's kind of what has shaped like our business, like all that advice. Because the thing is like starting a business is really hard. It's really stressful. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. And you don't get rewarded right away. And so the other thing that's really important to look at is like, what is our core business model? Like, can that business model make money? If it can't make money, when will it make money? And like feasibly, am I okay not making money until that point? And like look at it really hardcore like that, because it's not like a fun class project that you're like, oh, we have 10 weeks to like build this project and then we like get scored and get a grade and then we like move on with our lives. No, it's like you either like work on it forever and then you never get anywhere because you didn't get advice and you didn't get any feedback and like you just get frustrated and you just spend a lot of time. I'm trying to think. So seek advice. Really look at like your affordability runway and like how long it will take to make money. Also co-founders, I would never do this alone. Some people are built for it, honestly. I couldn't. There's no way. And you'll probably hear this elsewhere, but entering a business with another person is legitimately like entering a marriage. Like Lauren and I have like, we argue all the time, but it's really like healthy. Like we're arguing about the business. Like we both have different perspectives and then we like get to a place where we're like, oh that makes sense. Like I hear what you're saying. And we're really compatible. Like she's super organized, really driven. She's really good at the like day-to-day operations stuff. And I'm like the big dreams. So we need that balance because I die in the day-to-day stuff. Like it doesn't excite me.
I'm very similar.
And she gets super overwhelmed by like my big ideas. So it's really helpful for her to like rein me in and be like, Clarissa, that's crazy. I'm like, you're right. That's crazy. Or she'll be like, we can try that. And I'm like, okay. I'll help you.
You know, the green light.
Like, it's really helpful. Okay, so that's let me give you one more.
Sure thing.
Yeah, so co-founders are everything. The financial part is huge. Advice. And the last one actually is also very important. Know when to quit. Because like success is different for it. So know when to quit, but also know like what success means. Like what is success for your business? Like did you change the way 11 people thought about one thing and you're like, that's it, we did it, or did you like disrupt the market? That's huge. That's a lot of work. And if you don't meet it, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you like learned so much, and like you can start another business tomorrow. Like if we quit this tomorrow, we've already done so much work that we can start a new business fairly easily because we've already gone through the process. So it doesn't mean that we failed. And I think that's really important to know, is like continuing to work on it forever won't bring you anywhere if you know in your heart of hearts that like it's done.
It's better to like take it as a learning process and like take all the things you learned from it and maybe put it into something that is newer and might work better than like straight arrow, like it's gonna do that.
It doesn't mean you're a quitter. Like you're not a quitter. You're intelligent for knowing when to like stop something and then like put that energy elsewhere.
I love that. That was great advice. I was like, if I wanted to create a business, I would follow those for sure.
Honestly, it's what we've learned for sure.
Very important things. Well, that was all I had questions for you today. But I appreciate so much you coming in and talking to us and telling me more about SeaBlue, because it's so amazing. I'm so happy to like know all the more details about the inner workings, and now I'm gonna see your post and be like, I know how their brains work.
It's me behind Instagram too. If you ever message our Instagram, it's me. Awesome. Thank you for all your patience.
Of course. Thank you so much. I'm so happy we finally got together and we're able to talk.